At the beginning of the movie, we see a spaceship rapidly approaching Earth. Shortly after, it arrives on Earth and crashes near a river. At the same time, a man brings his friend out of the water, and this man's name is Kanan. Then we see that Kanan's companion is already dead, but he did not die because of the crash. This is because there were large claw marks on his body. At that moment, Kanan notices a box floating in the river, and that box is actually a computer that belonged to him. Kanan extracts information from that computer about the place where their spaceship crashed. Afterward, the computer begins to transfer all the information about that place directly into Kanan's brain. Through this, we learn that Kanan was not a human being but an alien who had come from another planet and crashed on Earth. Now, along with various pieces of information, the computer also transfers the local language into Kanan's brain. Afterward, he picks up his gun and heads into the forest, eventually arriving at a village. There, we see that the village had been completely destroyed. Kanan notices a door with large claw marks on it. From this, he understands that these marks could not have been made by any earthly animal. This is because such creatures are only found on his planet. Suddenly, someone attacks Kanan, causing his gun to fall into the river, and he loses consciousness. We then learn that the person who attacked Kanan was named Wulfric. Wulfric takes him to his village. Later, we see the king of the village, who tells his daughter to marry Wulfric, but his daughter, named Freya, refuses to marry him. Meanwhile, Wulfric arrives there and informs the king that their neighboring village has been completely destroyed. However, they do not know who attacked it. He also mentions that they captured a stranger from that place. Hearing this, the king orders an interrogation. Wulfric goes to Kanan and asks him who attacked the village. Kanan responds that the attack was carried out by a monster that he was hunting. Wulfric laughs upon hearing this. At that moment, Kanan attacks them and tries to escape, but they capture him again and tie him up. That night, we see that suddenly, a monster attacks Kanan's captors and kills many of them. The monster then takes some of the people and leaves. The king then summons Kanan and asks him who this monster is and what he knows about it. Kanan explains that the monster is called a Morwen by his people and that it had secretly boarded his spaceship before crashing near their village. He adds that it is an extremely dangerous monster that kills anyone who comes near it. No one believes him. Kanan suggests that if they want to kill it, they should take him along. The next day, they take Kanan with them into the forest to search for the Morwen. After venturing into the forest for some time, they reach a cave. Inside the cave, a large bear attacks them and is about to kill the king. At that moment, Kanan stabs the bear in the stomach with his sword, killing it instantly. Seeing this, the people start to like Kanan and respect him. To celebrate killing the bear, the villagers throw a party and rejoice, believing that they have killed the Morwen. Later that night, the neighboring village's king, Gunnar, attacks their village, believing they were the ones who attacked his village and killed his people. A war breaks out between the two villages. Gunnar begins killing people one by one, but the villagers overpower Gunnar's forces, killing many of his men. This forces Gunnar and his remaining men to flee into the forest. A short while later, while in the forest, the Morwen suddenly attacks Gunnar and his men. Gunnar attempts to fight it, but when he sees the terrifying monster, he and his men run back toward the village. When the villagers see the Morwen approaching them, they realize it is not a bear, but something much more terrifying. The king becomes extremely worried and asks Kanan for help to kill the monster. Kanan suggests setting a trap to capture it. The next day, they dig a large pit near the village and fill it with oil. Kanan's plan is to somehow lure the Morwen into the pit and set it on fire to kill it. That night, Kanan tells Freya his story. He explains that he came from another planet that used very advanced technology. His people were trying to expand their population, so they discovered a planet inhabited by millions of Morwens. They attacked that planet, dropping nuclear bombs to kill all the Morwens. After burying the Morwens' bodies, they settled their own people on the planet. Kanan says he lived there with his family, but one day, while on a mission, he learned that one Morwen had survived. After they left, that Morwen infiltrated the planet and killed all the settlers, including Kanan's family. While telling this story, Kanan becomes emotional. Later, Kanan and Wulfric go out to hunt the Morwen. Kanan throws a torch into the forest, and the light reveals the monster. The Morwen charges toward them, but they successfully lead it into the pit. As soon as it falls into the oil, the villagers set it on fire. A massive explosion occurs, and flames spread everywhere. Everyone believes the Morwen is dead and begins celebrating. However, inside the pit, another Morwen appears. This one a child of the first Morwen. Seeing this, all the women start fleeing in fear. The king rushes inside to protect his daughter, Freya, and fights the Morwen. Meanwhile, the fire has no effect on the Morwen. It escapes and starts attacking people. During the chaos, the king is killed, and the entire village is destroyed. The next day, the villagers prepare to leave, but Kanan, Wulfric, Freya, and a few others decide to stay. They discover that the Morwen's child entered the area through a well. Realizing they cannot defeat it with ordinary swords, Kanan takes Wulfric and Freya to the river, where his spaceship crashed. There, Kanan dives underwater into his spaceship and retrieves a piece of its metal. They forge powerful weapons from this metal. Armed with these weapons, they enter the well, following the water path into a cave. Inside, the Morwen's child attacks them, killing many of their companions. Farther inside the cave, Kanan sees that the Morwen has gathered many human bodies in one place. The Morwen's child charges at Freya, but she kills it, using Kanan's specially forged sword. Afterward, Kanan, Wulfric, and Freya exit the cave, where the adult Morwen attacks Wulfric, killing him. Kanan fights the Morwen, and a long battle ensues. During the fight, the Morwen grabs Kanan's arm and hangs from a cliff. Kanan uses his sword to cut off the Morwen's hand, causing it to fall off the cliff and die. Kanan and Freya climb back up the cliff and see the villagers sailing away. They call out, bringing them back to the village. Later, Kanan returns to his spaceship, where his tracker device has activated, summoning others from his planet to retrieve him. However, Kanan fears they might colonize Earth, just as they did to the Morwen's planet. He destroys the tracker device with his sword, causing the spaceship to leave. In the end, Kanan is made the king of the village and marries Freya. The movie ends here.